and welcome back to Getting to the Top, where I interview transformational leaders about their leadership journey. Today, I have the absolute excitement of sharing with you Sue Reynolds. She's a certified executive coach with a degree in organizational leadership and over 20 years of corporate and nonprofit leadership experience. She specializes in corporate, nonprofit, and small business digital marketing. Actually, I found her on TikTok and I just thought her advice was a breath of fresh air. And as we were talking through and I was thinking through what's really important for leaders of today, diverse and transformational leaders, what kind of advice do I think they should have? And she was exactly that. And I said, I've got to have her. So I messaged her and she said she would be willing to come on and talk to us about the things that she does and the advice that she has for us. She coaches, she empowers women to succeed in the workplace. She's a speaker and trainer on business, on social media marketing and leadership. She's also the author of the book Leadership Linguistics and the creator of the Leadership for Women course. Welcome, Sue, and thank you so much. Is there anything else that we need to add to your intro?
Oh, you've done a marvelous job, Racquel. Thank you for having me. It's really nice to meet you, and I'm so excited that you found me on TikTok. TikTok has been amazing for the last few years for a lot of us. I think it's been transformational as far as discovering people's content and new creators to follow. So thank you for having me.
I'm absolutely delighted. And I must admit, I don't do nearly enough on TikTok. And so that's sort of the next frontier. I actually just finished reading this book called The Comfort Crisis. And I think it's completely changed the way I think about, getting out of your comfort zone and doing the things that you're meant to do. So you'll see a lot more of me on TikTok. And certainly I follow you on TikTok at Carmine Media, which I absolutely love. I think your advice is so sage. So tell us a little bit about the career journey. How did you get started?
So first of all, I want to say that I just read that book myself, and I really do recommend it. It's a great way to get out of your comfort zone. And yeah, being on camera can be out of your comfort zone, but you seem very comfortable behind the camera. So I know you'll be great on TikTok if you decide to start making content. So tell you about my career. Is that what I'm doing?
Yes.
It's a long one. I think I've given away my age a little bit in my description. Yeah, I have a degree in leadership, and my main career is social media marketing. But as I began leading a team, I started noticing that women behaved sometimes very different than the men, even the same age groups. And I started investigating that because I want to make sure that my team is all equal. I want them to all be equally empowered to add their ideas and to come to me with fresh ideas. And when TikTok started to take off during COVID, when we were all sent home, I started posting content around that particular issue, around leadership, because I firmly believe that we need more women in leadership roles. It's still very unbalanced, and we need to do a better job of empowering, lifting women up to reach those leadership potential goals that they have, but sometimes they are in their own way, or there are gender biases that keep them from succeeding. So anyway, I start posting this content on TikTok, and it blows up. I could not believe the reaction that I was getting. And so I thought, this must be filling a need for people. And I didn't know, is this just a one-trick pony, or am I going to get more? If I start posting more, is this going to happen again? And lo and behold, here I go. And here we are now, 2 years later, talking about this topic in a real meaningful way, because I've now been able to reach a couple 100,000 people through TikTok and grow my business to include coaching and leadership topics, which I've always wanted to do. I've always been inspired by women leaders, and I wanted to be able to start giving back. In my career, I'm at the point where I want to give back, just like you said. You want to do something that empowers women, and I found that this seems to be filling a need.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's so important. And, I mean, my sort of central thesis is that the world would be a very, very different place if we had more gender equality and we had more diversity in the leaders that we have. And we have to think about the way that we're creating this new reality and what we're working towards. And the future that we're working towards needs to be one that's way more inclusive, because otherwise we run the risk of recreating the problems that we have now in just another form, because we're only taking a very small sliver of the perspectives in terms of what a beautiful life looks like to all of us.
You're so right. One of the one of the courses that I took in my leadership degree was around this very topic. And I'm Irish. My family comes from Ireland back in the days of the potato famine. And I tell you that because there was a story in one of my courses literally about how does the Irish potato famine have to do with leadership? And they planted in those days one particular type of potato. And when something came along like this blight, it killed all of the potatoes. They had no diversity in the crop. And so they were not able to sustain what they were doing. They were wiped out. And the point of that particular chapter in that book, or that leadership lesson, was how important diversity is in our leadership groups. Because to your point, if you don't have it, you end up with groupthink,
Yeah.
which, as you know, has resulted in many, many disasters over the years. When people don't think outside of the norm, the group norms, or what the perspective is of the main folks in the group. So yeah, to your point, it's definitely needed.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So you have this moment on TikTok that is now sort of, changed the approach, and you're providing the content. We're going to work backwards on this one with you. Tell me about some of the content that you've produced that has had the best reaction, and what has that advice been? Because I think there are specific pieces of advice that just seem to resonate with people, like create an aha moment. And a lot of what you've posted for me created that aha moment. So tell me about some of that aha moment that you've created.
So I'm glad you asked that, because it's a great testing ground for what people like and what people want. You post a video, you get hundreds of thousands of views. A few days later, you post another video and you get 1 or 2,000 views. So the audience really teaches you what they want, right? And you listen and you provide more of that content. So it turns out that what my audience wants is practical tactics on how to communicate effectively. And I think those resonate so well because they're something that you can take away and do. They're not sort of big idea kind of
Mm,
thinking. They're not these big vague goals. They're specific goals, specific tactics that you can employ in your language leadership now. And so that inspired me to write the book that you mentioned, Leadership Linguistics, because I realized that that content was really popular among my followers. And so I took a lot of the bottom line kind of practical, tactical advice and packaged it up in that book. That's clearly what a lot of people need and want, and that's what I'm trying to give them more of.
wonderful. So give us some specific advice. Like what if
Here's a good one. You've probably done this yourself. I have done this myself, and I see a lot of people that I work with and clients that I coach doing it. They use the word just in their
Mm,
emails or their communications when they are asking for something or when they are explaining something or giving an opinion. So let me give
yeah.
you an example. Hi, Racquel. I just wanted to follow up to see if you had the chance to review the materials that we need for Friday's report. Now, using that word just sort of negates everything you said before it. It minimizes, it's a minimizer. So removing the word just, I just wanted to, I'm just following up, I just wondered, removing that word just. You don't need it. It has no function other than to soften what you're saying so that you'll feel like you're coming across more likable, because we worry about that, right? We don't
Yeah.
want to seem like we're not likable. We don't want to seem like we're coming across too strong or like we're too assertive. We want to seem likable. And what that does is that translates into vague language that may or may not get a response. So it actually reduces the effectiveness of your communication for sure. So that's one example.
I think that's a great example. And, the way that I've heard people use just, and this one, it's so surprising to me that you're saying, listen, if I'm just calling, I'm just doing this. You're right. It sort of tries to soften, but in softening it minimizes it. It makes it seem like less than what it is. I am following up because this is due. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not out of place by doing that. But where I've heard just that has absolutely broken my heart is when someone refers to themselves as, well, I'm just the receptionist. I'm like, do you understand the place will fall apart without the receptionist, right? So you are not just anything. You are never just anything. You are either doing this now because you're on your way to something else, or you're doing the hell out of this now and you plan to do the hell out of it forever. But you're never just anything. You are more than what meets the eye in any way, shape, or form. So nobody's just anything. And I agree with you. Other than talking about the just transition or justice, let's just do away with just.
Agree. Removing just from your communications is one of the more positive or possibly most powerful thing that you can do. And it's easy to do. I should say it's simple. It's not easy because
Yes.
we're so conditioned to do it. But
Yes.
if you're writing your communication, you can go back and remove the justs easily. And then you need to train yourself to stop saying it.
Definitely. And it may be, that I know that I participated. I was a member and then a club president and then an area governor for a while at Toastmasters. And I loved Toastmasters. And I think such a phenomenal place to learn how to feel comfortable in front of a camera, a microphone, a podium, whatever, what will have you. And they teach you in that. And I must say, I have not kept up with it as well as I should have. But they teach you how to stop saying. And as a space filler is it takes away from what you're saying. And there's a fantastic book that I read that talked about the radical candor. And she
Yes.
talks about getting some advice from Sheryl Sandberg. And she says, when you say so much, you sound stupid. And she had to be pressed to get to that point of giving that advice because every time she said, well, you said a lot. And she's like, yeah, but that's just how I do it. And she's like, it's not. And it doesn't come across well. And so we'll have to find a way to sort of cue yourself in to when you're using just asking, I'm just saying, I think you're right about that. Figure out how to easy on email, easy. Well, simple, not easy, but simple on
Yes.
email because search and replace. But when you're speaking, to use it to dilute your impact is something that you need to first pay attention to and then remove.
Yeah, you're so right. It's a habit that we have based out of the idea that we need to come across more soft, less assertive, and those are gender roles, right? Those are gender biased roles that we get that messaging from everywhere, right? From everywhere, not just our parents, but all of society gives us that messaging. And you're so right. And you know what, Racquel, you and I have similar reading habits because I've also read Radical Candor, and I know exactly what chapter you're referencing. And I listened to her podcast as well. It's a great one where she helps women and all of us create an environment that encourages that 360 feedback that we can give, such as you keep saying just, you need to remove that. If you can create that kind of feedback with your team, you're creating a much more open environment for for trust, for psychological safety, and also for growth.
And that's a really great point, because in the book, it talks about also if you need to remove something from your language, or if you are training yourself to change something, you could potentially use an ally, someone who's a good friend within the organization. And you say, listen, I'm trying to get just out of my conversation because I realize that it is something that dilutes my impact. If you hear me say just, either give me a look or remind me after the meeting so that I can help to change this behavior. But I want to go back for a minute to that softening, to that likability, because I think one of the things that I say now or think now, and I've been on a journey with this. So I realize that I'm not at destination, and I may rethink this in 5 years, in 10 years, in 2 minutes, we'll see. But when we think about women needing to be likable and needing to come across softer, I actually agree that we do, because we haven't set this game. And until we have true diversity in leadership and true diversity within organizations, we're still playing by somebody else's rules. So we need to not necessarily adhere to the gender normative roles that we've been given, but I do think that we need to understand that these rules aren't ours, and there is a tempering of how we all would behave if the playing field was even, and how we behave understanding that it isn't. That should happen. Now, do you agree or disagree?
I agree with you, and I really like the way you just formatted that. The way you articulated that was powerful for me. We didn't make these rules. And I get a lot of comments from kind of knee-jerk reactions that say, you're making women the victim in this, or why are you blaming women? This is your fix the women kind of thing. Well, we only can control ourselves. We can't change gender bias by ourselves. We can't change the rules. We can change ourselves and whether or not we buy into these gender normative language things that we're talking about here. And that's the more nuanced part of this conversation, right? Yes, gender bias shouldn't exist. I completely agree. In the meantime, we can make being assertive more normalized in the workplace by doing some of these small tactical things in your workplace that remove that likability barrier. And women are judged based on their likability when men aren't. That is factual. Women get more performance review notes on their personality than men do. She comes on too strong. She needs to work on her likability. She's too assertive. She's too aggressive. She's too intimidating. Whereas in a man, those qualities are, he's a great leader. He has really strong focus. All of those, because, Racquel, we associate leadership behaviors with men. Like you said, we didn't make these rules. So in our minds, we have this bias that we don't even know we have that associates those behaviors with men. And when women act outside that gender role, there's a backlash. There's an assertive backlash. So it is a fine line to walk. And it's these small changes that you make in your language that help you be more clear in what you need, more assertive without sacrificing the likability.
That is such a great point. And you were talking about the comments, and I thought that was such a great point, because you remember when Lean In came out and everyone was like giving Sheryl Sandberg such backlash and she's blaming women. And I was just like, the only reason I read the book was because I wanted to be a part of the conversation, because I was certain that I would read it the same way so many other people did, where they were like, oh, she's speaking from a position of privilege and she's blaming women. And when I read it, for me, it was an absolute eye opener. It was a revelation. I sat down to read maybe about an hour of it. I could not put it down. So I spent the entire night, I just stayed up and read it. And for me, what it did was it empowered us, because it's easy to sit back and say, oh, well, it's somebody else's fault, so we'll wait until they change the rules. And I know that you, Sue, and I are actively working on how do we change the rules. But part of how we change the rules is that we need to get more women into positions of leadership so that there's more diversity at the top. And that will set a whole new tenor for what is acceptable leadership behavior. But until then, we cannot just sit still and say, well, the rules don't support me being successful. You have to succeed anyway. And you have to succeed despite it. You have to succeed because of it. You have to succeed because this is what we need all to create a better place. So it's really important that you not relinquish the power that you have, because the nice thing about the game, despite the fact that we didn't make the rules, we understand the rules because they're so very clear and so very blatant. So let's play according to the rules until we can change the game.
Spot on. And that's typically my response in a nutshell when I get those kinds of comments. It's interesting to me how much we don't realize that we've bought into these rules ourselves. One of the comments that I get frequently is, well, it's not just men that behave this way. Women also behave this way, talk over other people, maybe try to sabotage your success. Well, yes, of course, we have all absorbed these stereotypes, not only the men in the office, the women have too, and then we place those stereotypes on each other. So we are just as guilty as judging someone who's coming up as coming across too strong as a woman, as a group of men might be. We're just as guilty, sometimes more guilty, because we're placing our own idea of what women are supposed to behave like on the new leadership potential. We've got work to do. And you're right, owning the part that we have control over is the first step in changing those rules. That's who I'm talking to. That's what I'm talking to. We can control our own communication in a way that helps to normalize assertive communications in the workplace from women. And when we reach the point where that affects change as it relates to the number of women in leadership, then we know that we've had an impact.
Phenomenal, phenomenally said. And you hit upon another point, that I think is such a hot button, right? When people are like, well, women do it too. So do you think that this sort of socialization about the gender normative rules, that was only done to men? No, it was done to us too. And so while some of us have broken free and can see things for what they are, there are still many women who still perceive things according to the rules that have been set. And doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. They were socialized in the same way that we were socialized, in that girls play with dolls and boys play with trucks, and that's how it works. And because girls are supposed to be home with the children and the boys are supposed to be out working, we all received that training. It wasn't like just the boys went to that class. So absolutely, we all need to understand the things that have been conditioned upon us and how we need to change our thinking in order to get out of that. And so women are not immune. But one of the things that I severely disagree with is that notion that, oh, women tear each other down. I fundamentally believe that is something that men have been trying, not just men, but that the system tries to convince us of, so that we are fighting with each other for one slice of the pie while they've got the other 11 slices, and we're over here fighting over this one slice. Our women are their own worst enemy because we're fighting over one spot that is allocated to women. And I have women all the time said, oh, I had this female manager and she was horrible. I said, have you ever had a male manager that was horrible? Well, yeah. I said, the problem is that you've had so many male managers that when you have a male manager who's horrible, it's him. He's a jerk. But when you have a female manager that's horrible, you just think, oh, it's all women because you've had so few. And so until we have equity and justice and equality, it's always going to seem that that woman represents all women and that man is just that man.
That is such a powerful insight. And thank you for saying that out loud. You're absolutely right. I sometimes get asked about what kind of responsibility do I feel now that I have a larger audience. And when you are the first at something, or when you are in a leadership role, you do have that influence. You do set that standard. It is a huge responsibility. You're so right. And I try very hard personally. My personal rule is to set the standard for how I want women to behave in a leadership role when they reach that potential on their own. That's my whole mission. And yes, are there gender norms and we all got that message? Yes, we did. They were at that class too. And you mentioned Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, and I want to circle back to that for a moment, because there was a powerful statement in that book that still resonates with me today. And that's how the notion of little girls being bossy. When, if they're little boys, they have great leadership potential, right? But the little girls are told to stop being so bossy.
Yeah.
And that's a very different message. And that's something that came out of Lean In that really resonated with me, because I'm wondering now if I was that bossy girl back in the day with my friends. I'm the one trying to play office and not dolls. And I was told by my mom that I was bossy and to stop being bossy. I think that we still do that to some extent.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love that you brought up that book, because that's one of the tenets in her book, and it was powerful. And I remember the backlash. It was sort of brushed aside as a fix the women kind of book, but there were lots of really practical advice in that book and some very powerful points that I also found that resonated with me too.
Oh my gosh. Since that book came out, there were so many things that have been a permanent addition to my arsenal. I after reading the book, I called girlfriends, we had an event about the book, and still, like, you need to pick a partner who understands who you are and what you're doing. Otherwise, you won't be able to get that accomplished. That's really, really important. And that's a fundamental. So that book was absolutely phenomenal. And I think I was one of those bossy girls as well. And I'm fortunate that I have two beautiful, very bossy girls. And I'm like, go boss girls. And, the younger one is still getting the message that she's bossy and that it's bad. And I'm like, it's awesome. It is incredible. You are a boss and you're just waiting to get into the opportunity to be that boss. So it's not bad at all. She's like, Mommy, are you bossy? I'm like, I'm super bossy. And so are you. And I love it.
I love that. I was traveling this past weekend, and the hotel had a breakfast, and you meet lots of interesting, diverse people at these breakfasts because we're all gathering. And there was a little girl, and I'm going to say she was between 2, maybe 3 at the tops. And I think she dropped something, and she immediately started saying, I'm sorry, Mommy. And her mother said to her, you don't have to apologize for that. You don't. And I thought, wow, thank you, Mom. Good job. The little girl, who was 2 or 3, had already gotten the message that she needed to apologize for the most part, it was taking up space, very little space because she was tiny, but she was taking up space.
Yeah.
Where there were people going in and out trying to get their toast or whatever it was. And there she was, kind of trying to navigate through these great big adults. And she was apologizing for it. And I was so glad that her mother told her, honey, you don't need to apologize for that. You can stand here with me.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. And that's the kind of conditioning that we need to undo. And this is, thousands of years of conditioning that we need to unravel to maximize all of our potential. And it's not just for the girls, it's for the boys as well, to free them into feeling like real people and not always having to be brave and not always needing to not cry.
And know everything and have all the answers
Yeah.
and not be afraid. Right.
I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
it's really been unfair to both of us, despite the fact that it may have been it's been to our collective detriment. But facts be told, it's been more unfair to us. And I make no apologies about that. And I don't care who gets mad. Good for you. Have an opinion. That's what we're all here for.
Absolutely. And I continue to reinforce that while we cannot change all of these biases, we're up against, like you just said, thousands of years of conditioning. And we are trying to change, and things have been much better. Things are more opportunities for us are here than ever before. But those attitudes are still pervasive, and they cause sort of a self-loathing. I see so many of my coaching clients, they come to me, they are smart, they are educated, they are wildly successful, wildly talented, organized, like just top-notch women, and they have so much self-doubt and so many like imposter syndrome thoughts. They're afraid to speak up in meetings, they're afraid to share their ideas, they're apologizing for taking up space like the little girl was. And these are women who are at leadership levels already, and they're still thinking, I need help with this because I'm apologizing for taking up space. I'm the one trying to make myself small in the meeting, or being afraid to speak up and share an idea without apologizing for it first.
Yeah. And I think, oh my gosh, so many good points there. This need to always be perfect, this burden of perfection, and it's do away with it. There is no such thing. We're not ever going to be perfect. We're not ever going to be done. We can only just do the best that we can with the information that we have at any one point in time. And the people pleasing is so pervasive. And I think back to the point that you were making about, talking about the conditioning and how women are sometimes looking at other women from that position of, well, we don't behave this way, we're not supposed to do that, and putting their own limitations on women in the workplace because you either feel like I've never been allowed to do that, or I've done it and it's turned out badly for me. So there are all of these, a multitude of different things that we have to deal with and still manage to do the work.
Yeah, navigating that is tricky.
No, and
that's why I wrote the book, honestly. There was so much demand for those communication issues that we have that get in our own way. The removing absolutes from your language, removing diminishers from your language, only apologize when you've done something wrong rather than when you've had an opinion or when you took up space, and on and on.
Yeah.
The language, the specific language choices that we make to soften our language to come across more likable can really impact our success in the workplace. And like we said earlier, they are simple, but they're not easy because they're so habitual.
Yeah, it's so well ingrained in us to take up less space and to be less. And we have to think through a different way. I'm going to switch gears a little bit before we wrap up. As we were talking about sort of external opinions and backlash, and you one of the first things that we talked through was the kind of comments that you receive. And I think it's the kind of thing that typically trips us up as women, is that because we're so conscious about wanting to be perfect, how is it with you and the social media and some of the comments and being able to deal with that? And how do you separate it from you and be able to continue understanding that, listen, that's somebody else's opinion. That isn't necessarily my truth. And that's not important to me. And I still need to be able to carry on because I'm providing a valuable service.
You have asked me a very timely question. For a long time, I have been so blessed and amazed at the TikTok audience and the supportiveness of the TikTok audience. The amount of cheerleading that I've had since the early days when I started to take off. Since then, the landscape has changed a little bit, and I've started to get more negativity. I also this content took off also on Facebook. So I went from a very small following on Facebook to 137,000 followers in almost a week. And Facebook has been eye-opening in the brazen comments that you will get from people there. I'm getting them on TikTok. I'm also now experiencing them on Facebook. And I have a Facebook group where it's a private group for women to share these kinds of very things that we're talking about. And every once in a while, I'll take a dip in the comment pool and screenshot something that I have received just to share it with the Facebook group and say, tell me what you think of this, discuss. And again, the support that I get from most of the women is just incredible. It does it's jarring, the sexism that's still out there.
Yes.
It's jarring, the brazenness in which folks will express that. And I had someone comment this, and this has become sort of my mantra. This is how I stay grounded. Someone would not come into your office or your home and say that to you.
Never.
The fact that they're behind a keyboard,
Yeah.
and they have that protection of anonymity, maybe, but in some cases it's their real name. In other cases it may or may not be, who knows. But they would not come in your house unless they were a psychopath and say that to your face.
Right.
But yet they have no issue coming into your comment section and saying just really horrible things to you. And ever since I realized, and I think it was a follower that said that to me, that they would never come into your house and say that, that's been the way I've stayed grounded and kept it separate from it can affect your self-esteem if you let it.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about having influence. Suddenly you have visibility to a larger group of people than you ever had before. And the crazies come out. Yeah. And I have experienced some of that, especially around this topic.
Of course.
And especially in the times in which we live. So yeah, I've had to learn how to toughen up and really stay centered in that. These are a few people that are fringe thinkers, and for the most part, my audience is incredibly supportive and appreciative of the content that I produce.
Yeah. And it does say something about someone who wants to listen to something that they know they don't agree with just to upset themselves and make mean comments. And so I just, someone made a mean comment about a news interview that I had done. And I realized that it was the only comment that they'd made on the entire news piece. And my section of it was well into the news coverage. And I thought, you sat there and watched all of this to make that comment about me? Thank you for your commitment.
I sometimes wonder if they are trying to, and I don't want to sound pretentious when I say this, but I wonder sometimes if they're trying to leverage the audience that you have worked hard to build to get their own name out there by causing controversy, saying something controversial, so that people then comment on their comment and then they get that notoriety.
I think that's possible.
I especially someone who would watch your entire show before making a comment or an opinion, 3/4 of the way through it. Yeah, that's, I wonder if they're trying to hijack the audience that you've built to build their own notoriety.
I think that that's possible, but I can't help but think that for some of these folks who make like incredibly mean-spirited comments, that they're somehow in pain. Like there's something that, somebody didn't give you a snuggle when you needed it. Because you wouldn't, not even, I wouldn't come into your house and say that, but nobody who's like content and happy in their body and life would say that about another person. It's just like you have to be in a really bad place to have that kind of caustic reaction to another human. So I think it for me, as much as I, sometimes take it personally and have to kind of find my grounding, there are other times when I realize, you know what? This is bigger than me. This isn't even about me.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I don't think that they remember that you're an actual person
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
make those comments. They're talking to like an avatar,
Yeah.
someone that they see that, famous people who are famous deal with this. There's crazy people, and they deal with that a lot, right?
Yeah.
And this is similar to that in such a strange way that I think people see you as not a real person
Yeah.
who does laundry and, cooks
And kisses
dinner
kids
and
good
yeah,
night.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and opens mail and
Yeah.
all the normal things that we do every day that aren't on camera necessarily. They forget that we're a person
Yeah.
with feelings, and they just come into your comment section and make these crazy statements that are really really hurtful. And I think you're right.
Or
There's
attempting to be
certainly
hurtful. Yeah.
attempting to be hurtful. There's certainly something going on there that
Yeah.
has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
As a side note, if you'd like to see some of those, you're welcome to join my Leadership for Women private Facebook group, where I share them so that it gives you a little dip into the pool of some of the mean comments that I get. Those are eye opening and fun to talk about. And the community there is wonderfully supportive. So that helps me out a lot too.
I love that. I think I will join. And it reminds me of like the mean tweets that you see these
Yeah.
celebrities reading, which I think is always hilarious because some of them have priceless reactions and other times they're like, well, that's mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure maybe you're right. It's a takeoff on the mean tweet idea where I just screenshot it, put it up and say discuss. And it's shocking. But what I don't want to do is give that person a platform. So
Yeah.
sometimes you see on TikTok, somebody will use that comment and answer, and film another video using. I don't want people to be able to click over
No.
to their profile and give them
Yeah.
any notoriety. So instead, I screenshot it. I don't mention them. I don't want to give them any attention around it. But I
No.
do like the support that I get from the women in my Facebook group, as well as the insights that they add
Yeah.
around it. It's really been helpful.
Yeah, I think it upsets my daughter more than it upsets me when she sees somebody making a mean comment about me. She's like, "Mom, I'm gonna," and I was like, "No." I was like, "Do you read the comment, right? That isn't about me. That's about them. That's that is bigger than me, honey." And she's
Yeah.
like, oh, "Okay, if you're not bothered, I'm not bothered." And
I've
so
had to
that's
learn that I don't need to respond to every comment I got. When I was first doing this, I thought I've got to respond to every single comment I get. I'm creating a community. I want to engage with everyone. And I did my best to. But when you reach a certain point where you're getting, 900 comments, say, on a particular piece of
wow.
content, it's just not scalable for me
Yeah.
to do that. And so I do pick and choose now the comments that I respond to. I don't need to respond to those negative comments. I
Yeah.
just scroll by and move on.
Let it go.
Mhm.
All right. Sue, thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation and exactly the kinds of insights that I wanted to share. I think there are women who are navigating their careers and need these kinds of insights. Don't things don't take things personally. Eliminate just another modifiers and diluters from your language and learn how to communicate in a way that supports the career that you're envisioning. And there are a lot of really great tools. Carmine Media is one of my tools. I encourage you to follow her on TikTok as well. Great insights. But also, there's a leadership course. There's a Facebook group. There's so many resources available to us to support the careers that we're trying to build. I think it's really important that we get this diversity right this time around. It is incredibly important to all of us, girls and boys. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this discussion. Let's stay in touch and keep talking about it. It's important.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sue. Bye. And if you haven't already, please subscribe.